Tigers and Gators. Can LSU get back on track? Is DJ Lagway going to play? Oh, it's a Locked On crossover episode. Let's get it.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators or Locked On LSU, whichever one you're wanting. We're both right here, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Today's episode of Locked On Gators or Locked On LSU is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. And Matt, I know that you mentioned DJ Lagway, which is just, I don't know if he's playing. Honestly, at this point, I think this is truly going to be a case where it comes down to the wire. I know that last week I was told on Wednesday, no DJ Lagway. But I wanted to talk a little bit about LSU first, with just how you guys rebound from this. Because I feel like you're at the point where when you guys played Texas A&M, it was, okay, we got a decent shot at playoffs. You know, we control most of our own destiny. Probably going to drop a game in that stretch where it was A&M Alabama. Of course, you dropped both of them there. So just from a mentality standpoint, I have to ask how you think this team rebounds from that, where, you know, three losses at this point, 21st in the country, not exactly inside the college football playoff right now.
Yeah, I think the team is probably fine. I think young people are way more resilient. The fan base is not. And Brandon, this is wild. So think about, so you brought up A&M. So think about this. After the USC loss to open the season, LSU wins 6 straight. They beat Ole Miss, which was a massive win. At the time, it still looks awesome now. You bludgeon Arkansas, who at the time, remember, Arkansas was coming off a bye, and the last time we'd seen them, they upset Tennessee on their home field. So that looked like a great win. And you're going to A&M as a top 10 team, the only two unbeaten teams left in SEC play. You're on the road, and midway through the third quarter, you're up 10, and your defense is so overwhelming they bench their quarterback. Like, you're feeling really good at that moment as an LSU fan, right? In the 5.5 quarters since, 5.5 quarters, these 5.5 quarters went so badly that people are now like, is Brian Kelly the guy? Should they bench Garrett Nussmeier? Is the program progressing? I mean, it has been an incredible about face, and it really boils down to they couldn't tackle Marcel Reed, and they couldn't tackle Jalen Milroe. It is hard to explain how it all. It's easy to explain. It's they couldn't tackle those two guys. It's hard to understand why they couldn't come up with any semblance of a plan against those two guys. But specifically about, you know, the feeling internally, man, I think they're young people. They're resilient. They get to go play a game on Saturday. But for Brian Kelly, for the coaching staff, for the administration, the fan, all the way on down, like, they have to go beat Florida on Saturday. Like, you cannot lose this game to a team that might be playing a third-string quarterback that just had to give the vote of confidence to their coach.
Yeah, I mean, I hate that you mentioned third-string quarterback already, because that one is just, that broke my heart last week with the Texas game was just brutal. But this offense for LSU, I feel like explosive at times, and one of the most pass-happy teams in all of college football, not even just the SEC right now. I mean, Garrett Nussmeier has the most volume stats around for a lot of it. He's been inconsistent in recent weeks, we'll say. He's been turnover prone, and I think for Florida, that's where you really have to key in. So do you get to a point where you genuinely entertain the conversation of, is it time to bench Garrett Nussmeier if there's turnovers about again this weekend?
It's a good question. And Brian Kelly was asked that Wednesday on the SEC coaches teleconference. Before the question could even be finished being asked, he jumped in and said no. And I think, so I believe him for a couple of reasons. Number one, you don't really have a great option behind him. If you had a veteran quarterback that you felt good about, you could go to. But the backup for Garrett Nussmeier is Ricky Collins, who's a redshirt freshman from Baton Rouge. And really, we've only seen him very limited mop-up duty. There's no way that I would want Ricky Collins. I would willingly put Ricky Collins on the field in key situations against Florida in the Swamp as your first action. This isn't like week 2 against Nichols, where no matter how badly he plays, you're going to win the game. So that's one part. The other part of it is, for the bulk of this season, Garrett Nussmeier is the reason you've even been a contender. Your rushing offense, I believe right now, is 113th in America. It's so odd to say about an LSU team, but they cannot run the football. And because they have not been unable to run the ball and establish the line of scrimmage, Garrett Nussmeier has had to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. And because he's been so efficient doing it, it's how they won 6 straight games. So no, they're not going to bench Nussmeier. Their path to winning against Florida or any game heretofore is Garrett Nussmeier playing like the guy he did when they won 6 straight. And Brandon, he's on pace to have the 3rd highest passing total in LSU history, behind only Joe Burrow, who threw for 5,600 yards, and Jaden Daniels, who threw for 3,800 yards in just 12 games. Remember, he didn't play in the bowl game or an SEC championship. So you're talking about a pretty incredible pace behind only 2 Heisman winners that Nussmeier's on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I will also say this, of course, the obvious Nussmeier connection with Florida and LSU is something that I think fans look into way more than maybe the teams are looking into it. I don't think that they're really like, oh, well, the Nussmeier connection.
He told a story. I don't know if you heard, but he told a story when he was meeting with the media about the 2016 game. Of course, the one that got moved because of Hurricane Matthew, and when Darius guys went the wrong way and got stuffed at the line of scrimmage. And it was funny because the way Garrett was telling the story is he was saying we, meaning Florida. And then he was talking about 2012 Bama, saying we, because in the context of telling the story, he was talking about his dad's team. And he stopped himself and he's like, it's so weird that I keep saying we, talking about them, because I don't like them anymore. But it's the life of a coach's kid, right? So he even is well aware of obviously the connection and the fond memories he has, when his dad was coaching there.
It's like one of those things where I sit on both sides of the fence, so I'm always right. He's just like, I support all these teams. So
I don't think he supports the Gators anymore, dog. I don't think that's part of his DNA anymore.
I'm letting you know, I'm firing off a tweet. If he throws a pick, I'm firing off a tweet that he's trying to make it happen. He's doing it for us. I get it. He wants the Gators to get bowl eligible, keep Billy. Maybe he's just playing the long con of keeping Billy in Gainesville. He's chestnut checkers here. Looking at the LSU defense, I wanted to ask about them because you've mentioned some wild struggles with tackling quarterbacks specifically. But just in general, right now, LSU is one of the worst run defenses in the SEC. Is there any hope for getting that figured out, or is there any change of plan? Do you just get aggressive as hell with saying, hey, it's either injured DJ Lagway or Aiden Warner back there? But I feel like if Florida wants any chance to win, they need to be able to run the ball effectively at this point, regardless of who's available. So that's like something I need to key in on with this LSU defense.
So the defense does 2 things well. The LSU defense can cover pretty well, which was a major problem a year ago. But they brought Corey Raymond back. They're healthy at corner. They can cover pretty well. It's not. It ain't Derek Stingley out there. Okay, like they ain't got all Americans, but they can cover pretty well, and they are really good at rushing the passer. They're one of the tops in the SEC in sacks, TFLs. Blake Baker does a great job of getting creative with how he draws up pressure, and LSU is very good at getting home and affecting the passer. What they've struggled at, and it's not just stopping the run, it's when you've had the creative ability with a running quarterback. For example, Lenoris Sellers ripped off a 75-yarder against LSU. In that game, Rocket Sanders ripped off a 67-yarder against LSU. We saw last week Jalen Milroe ripped off a 72-yarder. It all starts with the quarterback's ability to run the football, where LSU has struggled. I mean, you can look at those key points throughout the entire season because there have been games where they've done exceptionally well defending the run. But when they have to deal with a running quarterback, be it single wing or however, whatever formation an offense wants to run out of it, if you have that dynamic, that element, LSU's been on it. The only time they stopped it was against Arkansas. And Taylor Green had a knee injury. Jaquindon Jackson injured his ankle, so maybe they weren't as dynamic and explosive as they possibly could be. But LSU held them to 38 rushing yards on their home field. And that's one of the reasons why people looked last week, me included. I said, look, they've shown they can do it. The Marcel Reed thing was an outlier because it was a sudden change mid-game. They weren't ready for it. Now you had 2 weeks to prepare for Milroe. You should have a plan. And then they didn't have no plan. Or if they had a plan, they couldn't execute the plan. So I'm fascinated to see if Lagway plays. I don't think Austin Warner is going to hurt LSU with his feet. But if Lagway plays and he's healthy, he's got the ability to do it. And that I think is maybe the biggest question of the game.
Yeah, absolutely there. I will say that I think this is a little bit of penance for having Jaden Daniels run over every single defense last year. They're like, hey, well, guess what? Now everyone is doing it to you there. And two, as you're talking, I just keep thinking about, man, I really need DJ Lagway to be as healthy as possible to be at least a rushing threat there. We'll talk more Florida Gators and LSU Tigers when we get back with Locked On Gators and Locked On Tigers. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, which, by the way, Thursday Night Football tonight. So perfect time to get gambling there. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, Brandon. Is DJ Lagway going to play?
Okay. The way that this was explained to me last week was, and I say last week because, of course, this is all things that are going to come out and people are going to lie to everybody about everybody's actual status. I'm not going to lie about when they were like, oh, yeah, he's a game time decision against Texas. I was told on Wednesday, and I told my listeners on Wednesday, DJ Lagway ain't playing. There's just no way that someone with that hamstring injury is going to be playing there right now. DJ Lagway, as far as the official SEC availability report that came out last night, is still listed as questionable. So I guess that's a little bit better, but not really. I do think this one will truly be a game time decision. He's going to go out there Saturday, see if he can throw, see if he can move, and make the decision there. Whereas, again, last week, we knew this. Middle of the week, we knew he wasn't playing. This week, it's genuinely up in the air about if he's going to be available in this game.
If DJ Lagway, but by the way, like, I'm not an orthopedist or anything, but I am a sports fan. You don't get carted off with a hamstring injury and you're 100% 2 weeks later. Like, there's just, if he does play, I don't know what version of Lagway it is. Let's operate under the hypothetical that it's not, that Lagway doesn't play, that Austin Warner plays. What does Florida's offense look like?
Bad, I think. I'm just being honest with this. I do think there's a path to victory when you have Aiden Warner's obviously not nearly as athletic or talented throwing the football as DJ Lagway, but last week when Aiden Warner started against the Texas Longhorns, I thought that the offensive strategy was just horrible. I feel like it was just, we're going to try go first down, play action, deep shots. And if they want to do that again, you're going to lose this football game, and it's going to be ugly. Again, you need to give your defense a chance to take some time off and try to recalibrate, especially after their horrible performance last week. But running the football is your bread and butter. I understand saying, hey, we can't be one-dimensional. They went far too one-dimensional on the opposite side last week. If the coaching staff doesn't make changes to their game plan, I don't think there's much of a chance to win this game.
Is everyone here? So you understand the context too. Like, Billy Napier was at ULL, and so people here are very familiar with him. And also Montrell Johnson, who's Louisiana kid and played for the Cajuns before he went to the Gators. So a lot of people know. Like, he's without Johnson. What does the running game look like? Because watching Billy all those years at ULL, like, they were so dynamic. They had a quarterback that was always a dynamic runner as well, and then they could throw off the play action and the ability of the quarterback to run the football. It just doesn't look like that's there with Warner. So what is? It might be with Lagway if he's healthy, but what does the running game look like with Austin Warner.
I think
Johnson.
I think you'd have to go back to the Kentucky game of what the approach should be. When you look at the Kentucky game of what Florida did on the ground, yes, DJ Lagway was available, but they ran a ton of counter. They ran a ton of split zone. I think you got to get back to that instead of what we saw last week, which was more just straight up inside zone, try to push something out the way. You don't have an offensive line like that. We don't know if Damian George, starting right guard, is going to be available for this game either, which he did miss last week. So you don't know what it's going to look like. I just think that you got to give him a chance, and I don't think that Aiden Warner is going to be much of a threat on the ground. In fact, we saw him try to take off a couple of times from the time he entered against Georgia and last week, and it didn't look like his strong suit is what I'll say about that one. But I do think that you've got a lot of power with Montrell Johnson listed as questionable. We'll see if he goes. He was game time decision last week. We'll see if he's going to be available this time. He was game time decision the week prior, if I'm not mistaken, also, which to me is inconsistent that someone's a game time decision and a week later still a game time decision. But yeah, I think you've got a lot of power there regardless. Jaden Baugh, Jacoby Jackson are physical backs. Jaden Baugh is pretty explosive when he gets the opportunity to actually just get a little sliver of space behind the offensive line. But I think they're good. I think that neither of them are, world beaters, but I think Jaden Baugh consistently gets you 3 yards at least and then some. And honestly, if you want to win this game, you've got to be able to kill clock and move the sticks a little bit.
By the way, I should mention as well with injuries, because you mentioned Damian George, LSU starting left guard Garrett Dellinger. That's a big one. He didn't play against Bama. He had the tightrope procedure on his ankle, and he's up in the air for this one as well. If he doesn't play, Paul Mabinga, who's a redshirt freshman, made his first ever start against Alabama and was the lowest graded player on the entire team by Pro Football Focus. So that is something to watch for a team that struggled to run the ball. So a couple of injuries on the interior of the line for both teams. But defensively for the Gators, statistically, everything is bad. I mean, and I look, it's not.
But they're playing hard, Matt. But they're playing hard. That's all that matters, right?
It's not. Look, it ain't throwing stones, because last year LSU was the worst defense statistically in the history of the program. They went to Ole Miss. You had an historic. Jaden Daniels was so good he won the Heisman on a 3-loss team. That you had an historic quarterback. The defense was atrocious. So I get it, but why is it so bad defensively for Florida this year? And is it as bad as the stats say it is?
I think part of it looks a little bit worse because of some outlier games. Miami had 12 explosive plays against you. Texas had 10 explosive plays against you. Those pile up and those add up. But it's also just been inconsistent. The pass rush has been wildly inconsistent. I know that people like to talk about some of the guys on the defensive line, like Jack Pyburn gets a ton of love from the fan base because he's a lunatic. There's just no other way to describe it. He's just that psycho that you need on the defensive line. But he's got the same number of pressures as your starting safety does. He's not effective as a pass rusher. The pass rush has been wildly inconsistent. We learned with the availability report from last night that Pup Howard, starting Mike, not going to be available in this game for the Florida Gators. So that just makes it that much tougher. And when you've got the injuries that have piled up, and I'm not an injuries as excuses kind of guy, but last week especially was so bad that Triquez Bridges, a starting safety, had to go start at corner and play the game there. Things are bad. I also think that this coaching staff just hasn't exactly put guys in position to succeed. And that's been a big reason that I've been very unhappy with them this year. I don't think that they're doing things the right way always. And I think that honestly, they whiffed on some guys in the portal and it just hasn't panned out that way. And you can't live like that. And when you look, you mentioned by the numbers, they're all bad. Last night, I was sending numbers to our Locked On Gators insiders. And when you look at Florida's offensive profile, there are some things in the top 75% of the country, like your yards per drop back, your passing play explosive percentage. There's some things in the bottom 25 defense. There's quite a few things in the bottom 25 and very few even outside the top 50%. They're just not good statistically. And I do think that they really struggle when this offense, they either score touchdowns or they're going 3 and out. And that's a really brutal thing to deal with defensively.
If the game comes down to a kick, how confident are you the Gators can execute?
I'm well, do you mean make the kick or get the right number of people on the field? Because I'm more confident they'll make the kick than get the right number of people on the field. I still believe in Trey Smack. Look, last week was his first miss in his entire career on a kick under 40. I still believe in him. I think he's got a good leg. He's just got to figure some stuff out. But as far as getting procedural things down, that's a different story that I have less confidence and more confidence than last year, but still less confidence this year. But I trust Trey Smack as a kicker still.
Special teams are always something we always tend to focus on offense, defense, and we forget sometimes in close games. Can you make a kick? I mean, look at LSU against Texas A&M. They had 3 opportunities at field goals that would have widened their 10-point lead, and errant snap on one of them, missed 2 other ones because the procedure was bad. The week prior, Damian Ramos was the SEC Special Teams Player of the Week. He was 4 for 4 against Arkansas. So college kickers, man, it can be inconsistent. But I do think that third phase, man, that could be massive on Saturday afternoon in Gainesville.
Yeah, and Florida has had quite a few issues in recent weeks. There was against Georgia. They lost 37 yards on a bad snap that went right past the holder and then flipped field. And that changed momentum.
How do you lose 37 yards on a bad snap on a field goal?
Yeah, but that changed momentum. You look at that point in the game, and it was tied to take the lead with that field goal, and then Georgia scored, and then Florida didn't, and then Georgia scored, and you were fighting from behind after that. But yeah, special teams, especially as of late, has taken a turn for a worse lately.
All right, how do we think it goes? We'll talk about it as we wrap up here. Locked On Gators and Locked On LSU. I'll knock out the 5-hour energy read. Today's show is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. I'm a big fan of 5-Hour Energy, man. I've been taking 5-Hour Energy every single day before every radio show that I've done for almost a decade now. And our friends over at 5-Hour Energy know being a passionate football fan, it's not just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or agonizing second overtimes, or blowout losses to Alabama, which is why they've created the Stan the Fan 5-Hour Energy shot, with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made for super fans like you and me. The fans who are first in the parking lot, last to leave. We see you. Look, if it's a huge play in the game, maybe LSU blocking a Florida field goal for the walk-off win, maybe. Let's hope it doesn't come down to that, but you never actually know. Make sure you got plenty of 5-Hour Energy. 5-Hour Energy knows no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, does anyone actually iron their jersey? Your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stan the Fan 5-Hour Energy shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5-Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, go ahead. You take it.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that I am ready to wrap this one up because I don't think my fans are gonna like this, or my listeners are going to like this. Not my fans; they hate me. I am Brendan Olsen. This is Matt Moscona, Locked On Gators, Locked On LSU. They do. They hate me. I get the comment every week. They're like, "Do you even like Florida?" Just like I love them. I just want them to be better. But,
like the reality is, sometimes it is like every fan base goes through it. And sometimes it's hard to do this job because, like I say all the time, when your job is to give opinions, 100% of the time, you're going to piss off somebody. It's just the nature of the job. You think no one is ever going to agree with everything you say. And dude, there's sometimes every fan base goes through it, man. Like when Ogeron was the coach at LSU, especially those last 2 years, man, that was struggle bus time. Y'all been feeling it for a while too now, I know.
Yeah, I could imagine that when Coach O is at LSU and it was going bad, it especially sucks. He's like, I don't know what the hell he's even saying at this point, but I know it's not something good about the team.
Hey man, that was not, look, Ed and I didn't have the best relationship. I have no problem with him as personally whatsoever, but people know I wasn't a fan of the hire when they made it, and he didn't appreciate that, and so it didn't go well. And there were a lot of editors from our supporters didn't like me. So I feel you, bro. I feel you. We all take the darts from time to time.
Yeah, and obviously both of our programs are doing so awesome right now compared to when LSU was winning national championships and when Florida was winning national championships when I was in the fourth grade. So we're basically right at the tip top here. But this weekend, we've got LSU coming to Gainesville for this game. LSU right now, 4.5-point favorites in this one. Matt, what's your feel for this game?
It opened 7. A little surprised to see the Florida money come in and knock that down, but I think that speaks to the doubt LSU that people have in LSU's defense and their ability to get stops. And Garrett Nussmeier being so turnover prone the last 2 games. It's wild to think that. And this, by the way, this is why I love an expanded playoff, because it's a long season. Teams are allowed to improve and a lot happens. But this is the same team that had such an incredible performance against Ole Miss, blew out Arkansas, was up double digits on A&M in the midway through the third quarter. I mean, they have played really good football at times this year, but this is also a team that lost to a bad USC team, as we now know, a team that blew a double-digit lead in the second half against Texas A&M, got absolutely waxed at home by Alabama. So there's kind of this Jekyll and Hyde act for LSU. It comes down to this, Brandon. If Garrett Nussmeier protects the football, LSU moves the ball up and down the field on everybody. They get tons of weapons offensively, and they'll move it on Florida, and they'll score points. It's just a matter of, like, can you avoid the key turnover? I mean, we've seen the past 2 weeks now, Nussmeier turn the ball over inside the 10-yard line. Like, you can't go. I mean, I don't mean to be cliche, but you can't go on the road in the SEC and turn the ball over like that and give the home team an advantage and give the home crowd a reason to get in the game and expect to win. So I really think LSU's better than Florida. If LSU protects the football, I think they get enough stops defensively to win, because I don't think, man, just outside look, man, I watched Lagway get carted off against Georgia. It's so hard for me to believe that in 14 days he's going to go from that to being the best version of DJ Lagway. So if it's a limited Lagway or Aiden Warner, I mean, I think that's a favorable matchup for LSU. A defense that's not great, but at times has been good, depending on who they match up against. I don't think Florida can do the thing singularly that has just been brutal for this LSU defense. So, I mean, LSU should win the game, but I say that with not much confidence, Brandon, because if LSU goes and turns it over 3 times like they have the last 2 games, I mean, you're not going to beat anybody in this league doing that, especially on the road. So that's the key. If you look at the turnover column at the end of the game and LSU's plus or it's even, I think LSU wins the game. But, man, if LSU goes over there and turns it over, it could be like the Burrow interceptions at the end of the game in 2018 down in the Swamp. It could be something similar to that.
Yeah, when I look at this game, I honestly, I think LSU wins it somewhat handedly. Like you've mentioned a couple times at this point, DJ Lagway carted off less than 2 weeks ago at the time of this coming out, 2 weeks ago by the time that the game's actually played. I said that day, that hamstring, I don't know if you or anybody listening, watching has ever hurt their hamstring before, but that lingers for a long while. And so I look at it and I say, I believe, or I refuse to believe, that even if DJ Lagway is playing this game, that he's going to be out there using his legs too much and being the mobile dual threat that he can be. And so I look at this offense. And even, by the way, I know that people keep bringing up, like when talking about DJ Lagway running, you need to be able to throw the ball, and you tend to need both legs to actually be able to do that, especially your front leg when you throw. So things matter there with your legs. And I think that you either get a 60% DJ Lagway, 70% DJ Lagway, or Aiden Warner. And I keep coming back to Florida is one of the worst offenses when it comes to finding success on third down this season. Worst in the country. They're one of the worst. They're bottom 10% in the country in finding success on third downs. And I don't even mean converting the first. I mean finding success, just gaining 4+ yards on third down, regardless of the situation. They struggle there. I think that Florida's defense gives up explosive plays, and I think that that's one thing that LSU's offense can do pretty well. I think that they're an explosive offense there. They're one of the better passing offenses, one of the most pass-happy offenses in the country right now. And Florida has not done a good job of defending the pass, despite Florida seeing I think it's the 72nd most pass attempts against them. They are bottom 50 in passing defense.
That's interesting stat, yeah.
Yeah, they're not good defending the pass, and they can't generate a consistent pass rush. I don't see a way in which this offense, while they're as hurt as they are, can just keep pace with LSU. And I don't think that this Florida Gators defense has done enough to justify expecting them to bring this game into just a drag out brawl. I don't have that expectation. I don't think that'll happen. So I do think I do think that LSU wins, and LSU probably covers the spread in this one. As much as I hate it, and if teams are healthy, we're probably having a different conversation, but fact remains they're not. And so we are not.
Have you looked at the playoff scenario for LSU with the SEC tiebreakers?
I have, but I'd imagine they're a little batty.
No, you want to hear this? So this is renewed energy here this week. If LSU wins its final 3 games, nothing's a given, but they play Florida, and then they're home against Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. Very doable. If Georgia beats Tennessee, all that would have to happen is on the final weekend, if Arkansas beats Missouri, LSU would win a 6-team tiebreaker among teams 6 and 2 in the conference and would play the winner of the Texas A&M game in Atlanta. And the winner of that would be in the college football playoff. So it's a very doable thing. Like LSU, maybe after that loss, we'll assume, look, they're not going to get in the playoff, obviously, isn't at large, but their opportunity to get to Atlanta, as weird as it is, because we play a stupid 8-game schedule and they ditch divisions and they're all just whatever.
The SEC is Pac-12ing, by the way. Everybody's just eating each other alive right now, and so they're not going to. The Big Ten has 4 of the top 5 teams right now in the college football playoff rankings.
Yeah. And explain to me how look, I respect to Indiana, but like they literally haven't even played a ranked team yet this year. So all that stuff ends up evening out by the end of the season, and it will. But all right, so we both think LSU wins in Gainesville. LSU has owned this series as well, man.
Since I've covered Florida, they haven't beaten
That's why they hate you, bro. It's your fault. That's why they hate you.
That's it. That's why we haven't beaten LSU, haven't beaten Georgia. It's just been brutal since I've gotten here. I will say though, a big part of that is because since I've gotten here, there's been a certain head coach here as well. And so it can't all be my fault, right?
Yeah. Apparently coaching matters.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is Matt Moscona, Brandon Olsen, Locked On Gators, Locked On LSU. Catch us every day wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.